Hello everyone and welcome to Interview Channel. Today I'm sharing 25 essential social work interview questions with powerful sample answers specifically for UK freshers. In the next 15 minutes, you'll learn exactly what employers are looking for and how to stand out in your interviews. The social work field is competitive, but with proper preparation, you can absolutely nail your interview. Let's begin. Qualification and background questions. Question 1. Why did you choose social work as a profession? Sample answer. I chose social work because I believe in creating positive change at both individual and community levels. During university volunteering with at-risk youth, I witnessed how effective intervention transforms lives. I'm passionate about empowering people to overcome challenges and build resilience, which perfectly aligns with social work's core values of social justice and human dignity. Your single click can feed a hungry child. Every time you subscribe to Interview Channel, you're not just investing in your career, you're helping us provide meals to children in need. We donate a portion of every video's proceeds to fight childhood hunger. So hit that subscribe button and like this video. Together, we can build careers and change lives. Now, let's move on to our second interview question. Question 2. What relevant qualifications and experiences do you have that make you suitable for this role? Sample answer. I hold a BSc in social work from the University of Manchester, which is HCPC and Social Work England approved. My placements include 6 months in children's services and 4 months with a mental health recovery team. I've also volunteered with Crisis UK for 2 years. I'm registered with Social Work England and have completed additional training in motivational interviewing and trauma-informed practice. Question 3. How do you stay current with developments in social work practice and legislation? Sample answer. I maintain my professional development through multiple channels. I'm a BASW member and regularly attend their webinars. I follow updates from Social Work England and the Department of Health and Social Care. I subscribe to Community Care magazine and recently completed a course on liberty protection safeguards. I believe continuous learning is essential in social work as legislation and best practices constantly evolve. Question 4. How do you understand the role of a social worker in today's society? Sample answer. Today's social worker serves as an advocate for vulnerable individuals, an agent of change addressing systemic barriers, and a practitioner assessing needs and coordinating services. In the UK context, our role involves balancing statutory responsibilities with person-centered approaches, working within frameworks like the Care Act 2014 and Children Act 1989. Fundamentally, we're facilitators of empowerment, helping people build on strengths while addressing challenges. Question 5. How do you balance the well-being of service users with the requirements of legislation and policy? Sample answer. This balance is central to effective practice. I approach it by thoroughly understanding both legislation and individual circumstances. I communicate transparently with service users about requirements while creatively exploring options within those boundaries. During my adult services placement, I worked with a gentleman who initially refused support but was at significant risk. By building trust and explaining concerns while respecting his autonomy, we developed a care plan that met both his wishes and our safeguarding obligations. Theoretical knowledge and approaches. Question 6. What social work theories or models inform your practice? Sample answer. I draw from several frameworks depending on context. Systems theory helps me understand environmental factors. Strength-based approaches focus on resilience rather than deficits. In my youth placement, I used solution-focused brief therapy techniques. I also apply attachment theory when working with families and crisis intervention models in emergency situations. I believe in theoretical flexibility, selecting approaches based on each unique situation and evidence of effectiveness. Question 7. How do you apply anti-oppressive practice in your work? Sample answer. Anti-oppressive practice is fundamental to my approach. I constantly reflect on power dynamics and work to minimize imbalances. I acknowledge my own privileges and biases through regular reflection. With service users, I prioritize their expertise about their own lives. During my placement with diverse communities, I took time to understand cultural contexts before assessments. I also challenge discriminatory language or practices within teams and address institutional barriers faced by marginalized groups. Question 8. How would you ensure person-centered practice when working with service users? Sample answer. Person-centered practice begins with genuine curiosity about each individual's circumstances and preferences. I implement this through active listening and open questions that invite service users to direct conversations. I ensure meetings happen at comfortable times and places, adapting my communication style to their needs. During my placement, I created visual decision-making tools for a service user with learning disabilities to ensure meaningful participation in care planning. I regularly check whether our approach is working and adjust based on feedback. Question 9. How do you understand the concept of risk assessment and management in social work? Sample answer. Risk assessment involves systematically identifying potential harms while balancing this against promoting independence. I gather comprehensive information from multiple sources, including the service user's perspective. I use structured tools as aids to professional judgment, not replacements. I believe in proportionate risk management, implementing the least restrictive measures necessary for safety. With an adult who wanted to return home despite falls risk, we developed a plan with telecare and environmental modifications rather than defaulting to residential care. I see risk as dynamic, requiring regular review and transparent discussions with service users. Question 10. How do you approach safeguarding in your practice? Sample answer. I approach safeguarding as fundamental while balancing protection with respect for autonomy. I'm familiar with the CARE Act 2014 for adults and Working Together to Safeguard Children 2018. During my placement, I participated in strategy meetings and case conferences. With adults, I implement making safeguarding personal, ensuring their wishes guide the process where possible. I'm attentive to less visible issues like coercive control and self-neglect. Good safeguarding involves preventative work and building protective factors, not just crisis response. Practical skills and scenario questions. Question 11. Describe how you would conduct an initial assessment with a new service user. Sample answer. I'd prepare by reviewing existing information while remaining open to forming my own impressions. I'd create a comfortable environment, explain my role and confidentiality boundaries. I'd use a conversational approach guided by appropriate frameworks, exploring the person's situation, needs, strengths, and networks. I'd assess risk factors and protective factors while building rapport. I'd involve the person in analyzing their situation and identifying priorities. Before concluding, I'd summarize understanding, clarify next steps, and ensure they have contact information. Afterward, I'd document thoroughly, distinguishing between facts, observations, and judgments. Question 12. How would you handle a situation where a service user becomes angry or aggressive during a meeting? Sample answer. My priority would be ensuring safety while responding with empathy. I'd remain calm, using a measured tone and non-threatening body language. I'd acknowledge their feelings and try to understand the trigger, as aggression often stems from feeling unheard. If needed, I'd suggest a break. I'd maintain appropriate boundaries while avoiding dismissiveness. After the incident, I'd reflect on whether my approach contributed to their response, document factually, and discuss in supervision. During my placement, I worked with a service user who initially responded angrily to parenting discussions. By acknowledging his frustration and focusing on strengths before challenges, we established a more productive relationship. Question 13. Give an example of how you would work effectively in a multidisciplinary team. Sample answer. Effective multidisciplinary work begins with understanding each professional's role and expertise. During my mental health placement, I collaborated with psychiatrists, occupational therapists, and housing officers. I prioritized clear communication while respecting confidentiality boundaries. I recognized different professionals have different priorities and worked to integrate perspectives into holistic care plans. I approached disagreements as opportunities for deeper discussion. I proactively consulted colleagues with specific expertise and brought social work values like social justice to team discussions, especially when structural factors might be overlooked by medical perspectives. Question 14. How do you manage competing demands on your time and prioritize your workload? Sample answer. I categorize tasks according to urgency and importance, with safeguarding concerns and statutory deadlines taking priority. I use planning tools to track deadlines and developed a color-coded system during my high caseload placement. I protect time for documentation rather than letting it accumulate. When demands exceed capacity, I communicate proactively with supervisors. I recognize good time management includes appropriate delegation and collaboration. I prioritize self-care and maintain boundaries between work and personal time, as sustainable practice ultimately serves service users better than burnout. Question 15. How would you respond if you observed concerning practice from a colleague? Sample answer. My response would balance addressing the issue with maintaining professional relationships. For less serious concerns, I'd speak directly with the colleague privately, approaching with curiosity rather than accusation. If their explanation raised further concerns or the issue was serious, I'd consult my supervisor. For situations involving potential harm, I'd follow whistleblowing procedures without delay. During placement, I addressed a colleague using dismissive language about a service user by initiating a reflective conversation about language and its impact. I consider raising concerns part of my ethical responsibility to uphold professional standards, values and ethics. Question 16. How do your personal values align with social work values? Sample answer. My personal values align closely with social work principles. I believe deeply in human dignity and worth, paralleling social work's commitment to respect and self-determination. Growing up in a diverse community taught me to value different perspectives, connecting to anti-discriminatory practice. My commitment to fairness aligns with social work's pursuit of social justice. When values conflicts arise, I use reflection to examine biases and ensure service user-focused practice. While I personally value traditional family structures from my upbringing, I fully support diverse family forms and ensure this doesn't influence professional assessments. Question 17. How do you approach ethical dilemmas in practice? Sample answer. I approach ethical dilemmas methodically, recognizing their complex situations without perfect solutions. I gather comprehensive information and identify specific ethical principles in tension. I consult the BASW Code of Ethics, legal requirements, and agency policies. I consider multiple perspectives, particularly the service user's views. During placement, I faced a dilemma with an older adult wishing to return home despite significant risks. Using Banks' ethical framework to analyze competing principles of autonomy and protection, we supported a trial home return with enhanced safeguards after thorough capacity assessment. Good ethical practice involves both principled thinking and practical wisdom developed through experience. Question 18. How do you practice cultural competence when working with diverse service users? Sample answer. I approach cultural competence as an ongoing journey. It begins with self-awareness of how my cultural background shapes my worldview. When working across cultural differences, I learn through respectful questions and research, avoiding assumptions and recognizing diversity within cultural groups. With a South Asian family, I took time to understand their specific family structure rather than applying generalizations. I ensure assessments and interventions are culturally appropriate, considering extended family resources or cultural strengths. I recognize when interpreters are needed and how to work effectively with them. Cultural competence also includes addressing systemic barriers and advocating for culturally appropriate services. Question 19. How do you balance confidentiality with information sharing in multi-agency work? Sample answer. This balance requires careful judgment based on clear understanding of legal frameworks including GDPR and the Data Protection Act 2018. I ensure service users understand confidentiality limits from our first meeting. When sharing information, I assess whether sharing is necessary, proportionate, and consider consent. With a domestic abuse survivor reluctant to have information shared with housing services, I clarified exactly what would be shared and why, gaining her consent by explaining how it supported her goals. I'm precise about what's shared, maintain accurate records, and use secure channels. Good information sharing is both an ethical and practical necessity for effective multi-agency work. Question 20. How do you promote service user empowerment and participation in your practice? Sample answer. I embed empowerment throughout the social work process by providing clear information about rights and options in accessible formats. I use strengths-based approaches to build upon capabilities rather than focusing solely on problems. I incorporate choice whenever possible. During my child protection placement, I gave parents options about meeting times when safety allowed. I recognize inherent power imbalances and am transparent about my role's limitations. I actively seek feedback about my practice and advocate for service improvement based on user experiences. I support collective empowerment through connecting service users with peer support and advocacy groups. True empowerment also means addressing structural barriers through policy advocacy when possible, reflective practice and professional development. Question 21. Describe a challenging situation from your practice and how you managed it. Sample answer. During my final placement, I worked with parents who strongly disagreed with my assessment that their parenting needed to change. They initially refused to engage, canceling appointments and expressing anger. I reflected on potential reasons for their resistance, realizing they likely felt judged by previous professional involvement. I adjusted my approach, acknowledging their strengths before discussing concerns. I was transparent about my role and demonstrated reliability by keeping all commitments. Gradually, engagement improved enough to implement a family support plan. This taught me about relationship-based practice even in statutory contexts, and how resistance often stems from fear rather than disinterest in children's welfare. Question 22. How do you use supervision in your practice? Sample answer. I view supervision as vital for accountability and development. I prepare thoroughly, bringing specific cases, learning needs, and emotional responses for processing. During placement, I used a reflective model to analyze complex cases, examining my assumptions and reactions. I actively seek and implement feedback. Beyond case management, I explore theory-practice connections and identify development opportunities. I maintain records of discussions and agreed actions. Between formal sessions, I identify matters requiring immediate consultation. Good supervision is a shared responsibility that maintains high-quality practice and professional well-being. Question 23. How do you manage the emotional impact of social work practice? Sample answer. Managing emotional impact requires intentional strategies. Professionally, I use supervision to process emotional responses, recognizing that acknowledging feelings improves rather than impairs practice. I maintain appropriate boundaries while practicing with empathy. During my child protection placement, I developed a reflective journal to process challenging emotions. Personally, I maintain clear distinction between work and home life. I've developed specific self-care practices including exercise and creative hobbies. I recognize early warning signs of emotional fatigue and adjust self-care accordingly. Sustainable practice requires both individual strategies and supportive workplace cultures that normalize discussions about emotional impact. Question 24. What areas of professional development would you prioritize in your first year in this role? Sample answer. In my first year, I'd prioritize developing deeper knowledge of local systems and referral pathways. I'd focus on advanced assessment skills specific to this setting through training and learning from experienced colleagues. As a newly qualified social worker, I'd develop time management skills to manage a full caseload effectively. Given this role's mental health focus, I'd pursue additional training in this area, particularly around dual diagnosis and trauma-informed approaches. I'd also develop court skills through shadowing and feedback on written reports. Throughout, I'd maintain reflective practice to integrate learning. I'd fully engage with the ASYE structure, recognizing that establishing good habits of continuous learning during this foundational year benefits future practice. Question 25. Where do you see yourself professionally in 5 years? Sample answer. In 5 years, I aim to be an established social worker with specialized expertise in mental health social work. I plan to complete a MHP qualification, as I'm interested in the intersection of rights, risks, and well-being in mental health contexts. I hope to develop mentoring skills to support students and newly qualified practitioners. I'm interested in contributing to practice development through research or service improvement initiatives. While I anticipate remaining in direct practice rather than management, I hope to take on increasing complexity and perhaps specialized responsibilities. This role provides an excellent foundation, particularly through its strong multidisciplinary working and quality supervision. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more videos like this. Share your thoughts and any additional questions you might have in the comments below.